Good morning. Welcome to the Ethics Plenary on our closing day of the conference. We only have one announcement today. If you are a woman who has lost a pair of brown glasses, we have them at the DRC help desk. So if you are looking for your brown glasses, we have them. I want to welcome you to the Ethics Plenary today. It is my privilege to begin the morning by presenting the Sharon Press Award. Please join me in congratulating Linda Fieldstone, this year's recipient of the Sharon Press Excellence in ADR Award. As the 9th recipient of this prestigious award, Linda is being recognized for her visionary leadership, professional integrity, and unwavering devotion to the field of alternative dispute resolution. Not to mention, she's just a really nice person. Linda is a formidable ally for families and elders. She has served in leadership capacities for initiatives and task force on parenting coordination, elder dispute resolution, and access to justice projects for the Florida Supreme Court, the Association for Conflict Resolution, the national and Florida chapters of the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, and the 11th Judicial Circuit of Florida. In those leadership roles, Linda was able to effectuate long-term systemic changes regarding how courts interact with high-conflict families. Linda's devoted support of institutionalizing parenting coordination as a method of court-connected ADR in Florida has come to fruition. Over 20 years of hard work have resulted in the Florida courts having a statewide system for qualifying, training, and disciplining parenting coordinators, as well as a code of conduct for practitioners to follow. Linda's passion for working with families in peril did not stop with her successes in parenting coordination. Most recently, she has initiated the creation of the Association of Conflict Resolution and FLA-FCC task forces on elder caring coordination, which use the parenting coordination model to develop a process to benefit elders in high-conflict families. The development of the Elder Caring Coordination Guidelines was a groundbreaking collaboration of 20 U.S. and Canadian organizations and 20 Florida statewide organizations, resulting in the Association of Conflict Resolution Elder Justice Initiative in Elder Caring Coordination. 5 states now have pilot programs in elder caring coordination. Linda holds an impressive list of professional credentials. She is a Florida Supreme Court certified family mediator, Florida qualified parenting coordinator, trained neutral for collaborative law practice, trained elder and family decision-making mediator, Florida Circuit approved elder caring coordinator, past president of the national and state chapters of Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, task force co-chair of the Association for Conflict Resolution Elder Justice Initiative on Elder Caring Coordination, and the former supervisor of Family Court Services for the 11th Judicial Circuit, Miami-Dade County, Florida, with 26 years of working for the Florida courts. Under her leadership, the Family Court Services of the 11th Judicial Circuit, Miami-Dade County, became a model for other courts statewide, nationally, and internationally, providing consultation for countries including Australia, Canada, the Caribbean islands, Colombia, China, Egypt, Ireland, Israel, Japan, and Spain. Throughout her professional career, she has initiated various groundbreaking collaborations between professionals and organizations to improve services and responses to children, elders, and families. In these notable roles, Linda has received a number of awards spanning the length of her career. It is our hope that receiving this award, which is named after her dear friend, Sharon Press, will hold a special place in her heart and reflect the deep appreciation of those inspired by her work. Thank you, Linda.
I'm a little nervous. And a little tired. I got back here from Toronto about 1 o'clock in the morning. So bear with me if I look at my notes because this is very special. We were asked, and that's the Elder Justice Initiative on Elder Care and Coordination, to speak at the United Nations and the International Federation on Aging Global Conference that I just came from about elder care and coordination, a conflict resolution process for high conflict families regarding the care and safety of aging persons, and to introduce delegates to a new concept to them, but a concept that all of you know, that the way we treat our aging loved ones influences all of the generations in their families. Family conflict is a health issue for the aging, affecting not only their quality of life, but their quantity of life. And the impact of that conflict trickles down all the way to the very youngest generations. Imagine your later years. Instead of the joy of loved ones surrounding you, gathered all together to be by your side, you feel the pain of a family splintered. Instead of grandchildren, nieces, or nephews, even great-grandchildren beside you, they are all home alone, while their parents are battling in court about you. Imagine then what you would wish for more than anything else in the world, for your family to just get along. Your role in conflict resolution doesn't end when you walk out of that room. You are dream makers, and you know that each parent's dying wish can come true, but it has to start now. By how they model for their children, share with their partners, and collaborate with their colleagues. When tensions of parents are reduced, family ruptures healed, and disagreements at work addressed productively, dignified examples of conflict resolution are modeled at home. Just think of a world where children all would have the opportunity to learn from unfolding conversations and learn collaboration and tolerance that bring people together who once felt a world apart. With each resolution process suited to each unique person you work with, You bring the tools and support needed to create a legacy that they can feel proud of continuing for generations, a legacy of peace. I am so grateful for this honorable field of work that we share. For my dear friends, extraordinary colleagues, and especially my personal legacy. My family, for Mani, our 4 children, their spouses, our other children, our grandchildren, who remind me every moment how precious life is and have already made my dreams come true. I'm humbled by this recognition as I think of Sharon Press, her ongoing dedication and personification of all we can emulate in the field of conflict resolution, as well as her friendship, and of her Florida legacy, Susan Marvin, and her outstanding example, and all those who work in our Florida Dispute Resolution Center and all of its committees, whose work support us every day, makes us better at what we do, and provides the standards for us to uphold. Thank you all for your inspiration.
We're going to move on to the ethics plenary portion of our presentation today after that wonderful beginning. And I would just like to introduce the members of our plenary panel who each have experience teaching mediation techniques and applying the ethical rules for mediators. The panel members represent mediators who conduct mediations in all types of mediation practice. Chris Shulman is a mediator, arbitrator, and attorney who has conducted almost 3,000 mediations as the neutral. Chris has served 2 4-year terms on the Mediator Ethics Advisory Committee, and he is currently a member of the Committee on ADR Rules and Policy, as well as the Mediator Qualifications, Discipline, and Review Board. A certified circuit, family, and county mediator, Chris is also an approved primary circuit and county mediation trainer and an approved court-appointed arbitrator trainer. Tagrid Gamal Hassan has been practicing law for nearly 20 years. She is a Florida Supreme Court certified family mediator who conducts mediations as a contractor for the 17th Judicial Circuit and also as a private business. Tagrid has a passion for guiding families through the difficult process of divorce and separation to promote harmonious family relationships. She is a founding member and past president of the Florida Muslim Bar Association and often speaks on diversity in the legal process. Charles Castagna is a federal and Florida Supreme Court certified circuit and family mediator and a primary mediation trainer for circuit civil certification. He has mediated in Florida since 1990 and conducted circuit and CME training since 1993. Charles served on the Florida Supreme Court Standing Committee on ADR Rules and Policy, the Mediator Ethics Advisory Committee, and was recently appointed to the successor of the earlier Mediation and Arbitration Rules Committee, the Committee on ADR Rules and Policy. Jean Potoff is a certified family, county, dependency, and circuit civil mediator. Jean is a primary trainer in the areas of county, family, and dependency mediation. She has served as an arbitrator and mediator in the court system since 1990. She oversees the court mediation and arbitration programs and the teen court program for the 17th Judicial Circuit. Jean has served on the Mediator Qualifications Discipline and Review Board and serves now on the Committee on ADR Rules and Policy. The goal of the Florida Supreme Court regarding mediators is to certify and encourage mediators who embrace the highest ethical principles. In fact, the court believes that whether the parties involved in mediation choose to resolve their dispute is secondary in importance to whether the mediator conducts the mediation in accordance with the ethical standards. The ethical rules are intended to guide mediators and instill public confidence in what we do, the mediation process. When you leave this plenary today, you should be able to name and describe the Florida rules for certified and court-appointed mediators, which particularly pertain to mediation techniques, which encourage and facilitate the voluntary resolution of a dispute without prescribing what it should be, protect and honor each party's right to self-determination, maintain mediator impartiality, and provide for a balanced process while empowering each party. We will be referring to the rules that were in your tote bag that you received. There was a rules booklet when you checked in. If you have your tote bag with you and you want to pull out your rules booklet, that would be terrific. It contains Part 2, the standards of professional conduct of the rules. On each of the tables, you'll see a stack of blue-colored paper. Those are handouts with an exercise that you may want to complete later, in which you can test your knowledge about the rules the panel is going to discuss today. And draw a line from the appropriate rule text to the rule number. That's the test of your knowledge of the rules. The panel members are going to discuss the real-life scenario in the Florida family law case, Vitakis-Valsheen versus Valsheen, in which a mediator violated basic foundational mediation principles. Keep in mind, as they discuss this family law case, that, of course, the same principles apply to all other types of cases: circuit, county, dependency, and appellate. On the flip side of your blue handout is the transcript of the Vitakis caucus, which we're going to be watching a video of in a little while. So if you have any problem hearing the words in the video, you can refer to that transcript.
For the next part of this session, we're going to watch a video made by the Mitchell-Hamlin School of Law. The video is a reenactment of a Florida family law case you may be familiar with, Vitakis-Valsheen versus Valsheen, which was decided by the 4th DCA in 2001. And this is a case that Ms. Phyllis Bernard mentioned yesterday in the open plenary. In this case, the husband and the wife entered into a marital settlement agreement after mediation, and the settlement agreement was incorporated into the final dissolution of marriage. The wife later moved to set aside the mediated agreement on the grounds of coercion and duress by the husband, his attorney, and the mediator, and that the agreement was unreasonable and unfair. As a general rule under Florida law, a contract or settlement agreement may not be set aside on the basis of duress or coercion unless the improper influence emanated from one of the contracting parties. The actions of a third party will not suffice. Creating an exception to the general rule, the 4th DCA held that the mediator's misconduct can be the basis for the trial court refusing to enforce a settlement agreement reached at a court-ordered mediation. The case had implications for all types of cases in which mediations are conducted, as it marks the first time the conduct of a third party, the mediator, was held to be the basis for invalidating the agreement. The fourth DCA stated in its opinion, during the court-ordered mediation, the mediator is no ordinary third party, but for all intensive purposes, an agent of the court, carrying out an official court-ordered function. We hold that the court may invoke its inherent power to maintain the integrity of the judicial system and its processes by invalidating a court-ordered mediation settlement agreement obtained through the violation and abuse of judicially prescribed mediation procedures. This case can be found at 793 Southern 2nd, 1099. What you're going to see is a caucus by the mediator, her brother, and her attorney. While watching the video, please note any behavior you may believe to be unethical under the rules. After we watch the video, the panel members will discuss the two caucuses and the applicable rules. Thank you.
The mediator should be back any minute.
Okay. I sure am glad to have my brother here. That jerk in the other room. Okay. All right.
Now listen, y'all, I've been going back and forth all day long. I don't have a whole lot of time. I gotta take my daughter to law school. We're gonna settle this thing overnight. I gotta tell you right now, if you don't settle, I'm gonna tell the trial court that your client here, Mrs. Vitakis, is the problem, because she's been intransigent. Now look, we got 3 issues left and we're gonna take care of them. She's been nitpicking all day long about rugs and lamps and chairs. It's even. Just give it up. Now the other thing is that pension. You've been hounding your husband about that pension. You know, it's worth $200 a month, maybe 20 years from now, and that costs $70,000 in Florida to litigate that. Just forget about it. It's not going to happen. You don't want it. And the last issue is those, pardon me 1 minute. Yes? I'll be there and pick her up in just a short while. We're almost done here. I want you to have a bottle of wine and a stiff drink of Southern Comfort waiting for me, honey. Thank you. Pardon me. Now, the last issue is those damn embryos. I know you want to get them implanted in you. No judge is going to make your husband pay child support for an embryo implanted afterwards. It's a done deal because the judge is going to order them destroyed. Now, you're going to sign this stuff today or we're out of here because I've got to leave in the next 5 minutes. Now, I think you ought to tell your client, we're done. We need to be finished.
Well, it's a good video to use for a bit of humor and also for a shaking of the head and hoping that we have never said any of those things when we've mediated. If you caught some phrases by the mediator that seemed familiar, Phyllis Bernard actually quoted from this case yesterday during her plenary. She didn't mention what case it was or the context, but she did talk about the same things that the mediator just said in the video. So you may want to refer to your rules pamphlet because the panel members are going to be talking about the rules, and we're just going to get started. Tagrid, what can you tell us about the mediator's role in mediation?
Good morning, everybody. Okay, so Rule 10.220 basically explains what a mediator's role is. The role of a mediator is to reduce obstacles to communication, assist in the identification of issues and exploration of alternatives, and otherwise facilitate voluntary agreements resolving the dispute. The ultimate decision-making authority, however, rests solely with the parties. In my opening statements, usually I emphasize voluntary, even though most people are court-ordered to go to mediation. This is their opportunity to have control over their process. And I emphasize that. I basically explain to them that this is their opportunity for self-determination, that if they go into court, they kind of, give that up. They give that up to a judge who does not know them personally, does not know their families. I mean, as a family attorney, they give up their rights to be creative. Obviously, the mediator in this case did not facilitate a voluntary agreement and basically just used coercive tactics to try and get to an end result. I think it's important to emphasize that mediators are not judges. We do not make findings of fact. We might have certain opinions and we might make some suggestions, but at the end of the day, we're not judges, we're not finders of facts, and that's very important to emphasize because you want to maintain that voluntariness and let people be in control of the process. Mediation is a time to be creative, and that's really the role of the mediator, is to have them think outside the box. Finally, the mediator is supposed to facilitate communication between the parties. Basically, by taking one side in this case, the mediator failed to bridge the communication gap. In fact, probably exacerbated the relationship between the wife and the husband. He made no attempts to ease tensions, and probably, rather than be, the grouch, he should have been more of a cheerleader, been more positive with where, they were, and perhaps, emphasize the progress that they've made, and rather than just use coercive tactics to get to, an agreement.
Chris, given what Tagrid said about the mediator's role, do you think Ms. Vitakis-Valshin felt empowered in this caucus?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't.
Answer.
Thank goodness. All right. It was early in the morning. I want to make sure I got that part out right up front. If you had some difficulty hearing the video, I encourage you to take a look at the transcript that's on the reverse, the blue sheets that you have, so that you can see just exactly how badly this mediator acted. I also think that it's important to recognize that there are many rules, and the panel's going to talk about the many rules that this mediator violated. The first of them is Rule 10.3.10 with respect to self-determination. Principally, although not exclusively, I'm concerned about the violations of both 10.3.10b and 10.3.10c that we saw in the video. So 10.3.10b, you've got your rules in front of you. That's the one that prohibits coercion of the parties or improper influence of the parties to make a decision or to unwillingly participate, right? Okay. So my biggest concerns that I have with what he did was this mediator was what used to be referred to as a masher, okay? Forcing a deal no matter what that deal might be. And that's a clear violation of 10.3.10b. So he wanted a deal, he didn't care what it was, and by the way, he wanted it very quickly. Oh, excuse me, I have to take a call. Yeah, okay. In any event, so for example, his tactics of threatening to report the wife as intransigent to the court, right? Or his quote, "I gotta tell you right now, if you don't settle, I'm gonna tell the trial court that your client, Mrs. Vitakis, is a problem because she's being intransigent." That's what he said to her lawyer. Or rushing her to make a deal, "You're gonna have to sign the agreement today or we're out of here because I gotta leave in the next 5 minutes. Okay. Or in terms of one of the specific items that was the subject of the negotiation, telling her, just forget about it, it's not going to happen. So the mediator doesn't get to make those decisions for the parties and doesn't get to force the parties into any particular deal. The 10.3.10c issue comes up from the fact that 10.3.10c is the one that prohibits a mediator from making misrepresentations during the course of a mediation. And one of the things that he talked about was that one of the issues was going to cost the parties, was going to cost her $70,000 in attorney's fees. Now, that sounds like a really large number, and if you read the 4th DCA opinion, it becomes clear that, in fact, the amount was probably only going to be about $35,000 or less, and chances were that the mediator knew that. So to the extent that the mediator has intentionally exaggerated what that number is to try to create pressure to force the party to settle, that's a misrepresentation, and that violates the rules.
Thank you, Chris. All important points. Charles, do you think that there were any non-participating persons mentioned in the video script?
They were alluded to. If you all look at 10.320 in your materials, the rule dealing with non-participating persons, you'll see that the requirement is that a mediator shall promote awareness by the parties of the interests of persons affected by actual or potential agreements who are not represented at mediation. And the important phrase there, I think, is promote awareness. You know, it's not for us as the mediator to say, you need to consider this or you must consider this. It's to promote awareness. Have you thought about it? Have you considered? Do you want to discuss or consider this issue? And the only issue that I can imagine that would have to do with unrepresented parties would be with regard to the embryos and whether they would be considered lives in being. And with apologies to Professor Van Doren, I cannot recall from my law school days whether they would be considered lives in being or not. But to the extent that they would be, the mediator should offer to facilitate a discussion about potential child support and parenting issues, again, if the parties choose to go down that road. They would have the option, certainly, of saying, we don't want to talk about that, or that's not an issue that we choose to address at this time. But it's for the parties to decide whether they want to address the issues relating to unrepresented persons.
Thank you. Jean, do you think the mediator's conduct raised any issues of impartiality?
Well, the mediator was definitely not impartial. If you look at Rule 10.330 regarding impartiality, generally in Section A, a mediator shall maintain impartiality throughout the mediation process. Impartiality means freedom from favoritism or bias in word, action, or appearance, and includes a commitment to assist all parties as opposed to any one individual. The mediator demonstrated that he did not maintain impartiality by his body language, including standing up during the process and displaying frustration toward the party. This included his hand gestures, his tone of voice. He sighed. He also accepted a personal call, which was not urgent. He showed bias by his words and phrases, such as, we've got to settle this thing or we're done. You're nitpicking. You're hounding your husband. Forget about it. You don't want it. And give it up. He showed favoritism for the other side by stating, if you don't settle, I'm going to tell the trial court that your client, Mrs. Vitakis, is the problem. He coerced an agreement by predicting the court ruling without knowing, or if known, not presenting the offer by the other side as it pertains to the value of the husband's pension or marital estate itself. In this particular rule and in the committee notes under the revision in 2000, a mediator shall maintain impartiality while raising questions regarding the reality, fairness, equity, durability, and feasibility of proposed options for settlement. If he had asked exploratory, open-ended questions in a neutral manner, he would have assisted that party in coming up with their own resolution or decision. Rule 10.330B states the withdrawal for partiality, and a mediator shall withdraw from mediation if the mediator is no longer impartial. This particular mediator should have withdrawn as soon as possible. So the committee notes state a mediator has an affirmative obligation to maintain impartiality throughout the entire mediation process. A mediator shall not accept or continue any engagement for mediation services in which the ability to maintain impartiality is reasonably impaired. And if we look at Rule 10.620, It references integrity and impartiality. Mediators shall not accept any engagement, provide any service, or perform any act that would compromise the mediator's integrity or impartiality. In addition to the items I previously referenced, the mediator should not schedule or accept mediations whereby there's a personal time constraint, which the mediator used. He used this as a pressure tactic in having the parties sign the agreement. The mediator referenced the need for having to take his daughter to college at the beginning of the session and that he needed to leave in 5 minutes at the end. The mediator's discussion with his wife regarding pouring him a drink and having a bottle of wine ready does not paint the mediator in the best light regarding his integrity, nor do his assertions pertaining to what he thinks the wife wants to do with the embryos and stating how the court will rule.
Well, I guess some of that leads right into what Chris might think about the mediator's demeanor. Did he have any demeanor issues?
Well, I'm glad that you added issues, because I was going to say, yeah, no real demeanor there. So the rule 10350 requires mediators to be patient, dignified, and courteous during the mediation process. And you all, or some of you laughed when I took out my phone in the middle of it, because we all recognize that that's just not done in the middle of a setting like this. Nor should it be done in the setting of the video that we saw. So we want these folks to talk, and then we want these folks ultimately, if they're willing to reach an agreement. We need to foster that environment in which that's possible. Necessarily, we need to be patient, dignified, and courteous in the process, right? He wasn't. So he was talking in terms of characterizing the wife's negotiation approach, which is generally a bad thing for a mediator to do, to criticize how a person's negotiating, especially because by criticizing that, he was criticizing her as well, and doing so disrespectfully. So his reference to nitpicking, right, or hounding her husband about the pension. These are not terms of love, right? These are not terms of showing that you're being considerate and that you value what the person is saying to you. Taking the non-emergency call, clearly rude, making other impolite comments, and then also the fact that he was rushing them to get something done, is bad, but especially because he was rushing to get them to do something because he had something he wanted to go do, rather than focusing on the parties. You know, our speaker yesterday, one of our speakers was talking in terms of being mindful and in the moment when you're mediating. He clearly was not, and from my perspective, he therefore wasn't patient, dignified, or courteous.
All right. Hagrid, did the mediator's comments raise any issues of confidentiality?
Yes, of course. I just wanted to kind of follow up with what Chris had mentioned, and I wanted to just add that he was not empathetic. I think empathy to the parties that are in front of you is just very important. When you're able to relate to them, it goes a long way for them to feel that they're heard, that they could, be able to move on from, where they're at. I think, just having that connection is just really important. I mean, he was just completely non-empathetic. So I just wanted to add, my thought on that. And of course, he threatened the wife that he would tell the judge that she was the problem. And that clearly breaks confidentiality rule 10.360, where it says that a mediator shall maintain confidentiality of all information revealed during mediation, except where disclosure is required or permitted by law. And the same is true in caucus. Information obtained during caucus may not be revealed by the mediator to any other mediation participant without the consent of the disclosing party. Clearly here the mediator was trying to use, coercion. I'm going to tell the judge, you're the problem. Wholly inappropriate. Mediators can't disclose anything to the court. They can't disclose what happens in mediation. We can't be called as witnesses or divulge information in a court process. So he was basically using it as a method of coercion, which is completely inappropriate.
Thank you. So if a mediator informs a party about what he thinks the judge in the case will do, could that violate Rule 10.370, Charles?
Let me think about that for a minute. Absolutely. Let me actually start briefly with the A and B before we get to the question that you just asked, Susan. 10.370A, providing information, and look at this prefatory language in the rule, consistent with standards of impartiality and preserving party self-determination. If you do that, then the mediator may provide information that you're qualified by your training and experience to provide. So there's a lot of overlap in terms of what's already been discussed with the impartiality violations and such, but as you go through the rules, not just 10.370, but this is a common theme that is repeated throughout, that whatever you're doing, you have to be mindful of that. And again, without being hopefully redundant, some of the examples of the lack of impartiality, if you don't settle, I'm going to tell the trial court, and Taggart just touched on the confidentiality implications of that, your client, Ms. Vitakis, is the problem because she's been intransigent. Now look, we've got 3 issues left. We're going to take care of them. Again, very directive and not at all honoring and respecting self-determination there. In terms of 10.370B, independent legal advice, the rule provides that when a mediator believes a party does not understand or appreciate how an agreement may adversely affect legal rights or obligations, the mediator shall advise the party of the right to seek independent legal counsel. Technically, that doesn't apply here because she had counsel. However, I would add as an aside that, excuse me, it is poor form for the mediator to advise the party of the right to seek independent legal counsel when they've got a lawyer sitting right next to them at the mediation. Even though it may be your strong belief that they really don't have counsel sitting next to them at the mediation, you dance with the one that brung you, and that's who their lawyer is, and I think that needs to be respected. But getting to Susan's question finally, 10.370C is the rule dealing with personal or professional opinion. And there what is prohibited or the rule provides that a mediator shall not offer a personal or professional opinion intended to coerce. So there is an intent requirement. And I think if you look at the language that was used and the body language and just all the mannerisms, there seemed to be an intent there to coerce. He had his own separate personal agenda and was certainly, I think, intending to coerce the parties or unduly influence the party or decide the dispute in a variety of ways. This is what the judge is going to do, which is, again, clearly prohibited by 10.370C. And the language there is the last sentence of that rule. A mediator shall not offer a personal or professional opinion as to how the court in which the case has been filed will resolve the dispute. And the mediator's language, in addition to being threatening, I think, to tell the trial court that she is the problem, and characterizing, as Chris talked earlier about nitpicking and hounding, he opined that no judge, and I presume that would mean including the judge hearing your case, no judge is going to make your husband pay child support for an embryo implanted afterwards. The judge is going to order them destroyed. So again, clear violations of the rule prohibiting a mediator from giving a personal or professional opinion as to what the judge in this case is going to do. So a very long-winded answer to your question, Susan.
Well, that's all right. It's a good answer.
Thank you.
And Taggart, how would the mediator schedule the mediation in any different way that might avoid some of these issues we've been talking about?
Well, he definitely should have given them more time. I don't know, the full facts of how long the mediation went, but definitely coming in and saying, I need to pick up my daughter and, we need to finish this in 5 minutes, that was, again, inappropriate. Rule 10.430 provides that a mediator shall schedule a mediation in a manner that provides adequate time for parties to fully exercise their right of self-determination. And generally, I always, if a party asks for 2 hours, I give them 4 hours. I schedule out 4 hours because they don't know how long this process takes. They usually underestimate, oh, we're just going to go in, we're going to write this up, and we're going to be done. And they don't know the the extent of their issues. They generally oversimplify, what their disputes are, and they don't realize how long it takes to sit and write an agreement. I think it's important also to, and I'm not going to touch on Jean's point because she did it, so fabulously, but I think it's important to know that it's not all or nothing. So even if you run out of time, you should try and at least enter into a partial agreement. You can continue the mediation, and it also depends on where the parties are at. They might be early in their process where they're not really ready to settle. They still need to do some more discovery. And you need to kind of, schedule mediation according to where the parties are at, not so much where the mediator wants to be. I think it's just very important when it comes to time to know where your parties are at.
Thank you. And I suppose Phyllis Bernard said yesterday when she was talking about the mediator's behavior in this case, even though she didn't mention it was this case, that the mediator didn't want to lose his connection with his family. So the phone call, having the discussion with the wife and taking the daughter to law school might have been very important things for the mediator, but maybe the mediator needed to do some self-care by asking the parties if they would adjourn and come back later when he could focus more on them and not engage in unethical behavior that wasn't helpful to their process. So we do need to be mindful of the time and our own needs, as well as the parties' needs. So, given what the panel has taught us about the mediator's behavior and how it violated the rules, we are going to have some of our own actors portray a caucus on behalf, using one of the legal issues in this case, the husband's pension issue. We didn't have time for both that issue and the embryos, but we're going to do an reenactment of the caucus in an ethical manner using the pension issue to demonstrate ethical mediator techniques, and some of what our panel has been saying could have been used by the mediator. So come on up, not ready for primetime actors, who are acting as well as they are being paid, since they're volunteers. Or better, they're probably acting better.
Worth every penny.
Yes. So I want to introduce our actors, and that is Kimberly Kosh is going to be the wife, Calliope Vitakis Valsheen. Tom Herzog is going to be her very quiet but supportive brother. And Stephanie McCarty is playing the wife's attorney. Juan Collins is going to be our mediator. So take it away, crowd.
The mediator should be back any minute now.
Oh, good. And I'm sure glad that I have my brother Tom here with me.
Yeah, it really worked out well that when we asked, the mediator was able to get the other side's permission for your brother to participate. I know some mediators don't like to have non-parties attend mediation, but at least our mediator understood how important it was to you and didn't try to exclude your brother. I mean, not that he's allowed to exclude your brother if we wanted him here and the other side didn't object.
Okay, we've been at this for some time. I really appreciate your continued patience as we get closer and closer to a deal that you both can live with. Through some hard work on both sides of the table, the parties have worked out most of their issues in this divorce. Most recently, I believe you reached an agreement on equitable distribution of most of the marital assets. From what I've been allowed to share back and forth between the two caucus rooms, it seems that there are only two main issues outstanding at this time. First, your husband's pension, and second is the frozen fertilized embryos you and your husband have created and stored. With your permission, may we begin with the pension first?
Sure, it seems to me the disposition of the embryos is a more emotionally charged issue. So yes, let's start about talking about the pension first.
Excellent, thank you. Now, from what you've told me already, Ms. Valsheen, Mr. Valsheen is vested in the pension plan, but he will not, under ordinary circumstances, begin to collect monthly payments until he reaches age 65, right?
Yes, that's correct.
How much will that monthly payment be again?
It's about $400 total, and I want half, and I think that that's only fair. Don't you think that's fair?
Well, as I've explained earlier, it doesn't matter what I think is fair. Instead, what matters is what you and Mr. Valsheen think is fair. And of course, since your marital settlement agreement will require court approval, it matters what the court thinks. But we don't know as of yet where we sit today how the court will rule, at least not with any certainty. Now, Mr. Valsheen tells me he would rather not split the pension. He feels he's worked hard for it, and since he's already agreed to pay you alimony and to split other marital property with you, he should not have to split that too.
Well, he's entitled to his opinion, even if we think it's wrong. As a practical matter, I am confident the court would eventually award my client half of the pension. Now, Calliope, I'm not guaranteeing you the court would rule in our favor on that point. I just feel pretty confident the judge will see it our way.
Understood. But here's the thing. Mr. Valsheen does not seem willing to give up the pension voluntarily. If that is the case, we may not be able to get a deal here today unless one of you gives a bit on the issue, or we come up with some other way to address your concern. Counsel, let's say you're right about what the court is likely to do on the pension issue. If Mr. Valsheen isn't willing to give it up without a fight, how much do you think it would cost your client in attorney's fees to litigate that point?
Well, that's hard to say, but probably about $35,000.
Is that inclusive of any appeal if Mr. Valsheen should disagree with the court finding in your favor?
Yeah, but that's just a rough calculation.
So who would pay the $35,000, your client or Mr. Valsheen?
Probably my client. They each would have, especially with the offered alimony and equitable distribution, about the same resources with which to pay attorney's fees. So while we would ask the court to make him pay my client's fees, that would likely not be granted. Calliope, you'd be on the hook for that extra $35,000.
So how much would your client receive in actual pension payments if the court rules in her favor?
I don't know that for sure.
Let's see, $200 a month from when Valsheen turns 65 until he dies. Let me do the math. If we assume he lives until age 80, that's 15 years of payment at $2,400 a year, so $36,000.
That's about the same amount it would cost to litigate the issue, right?
Yep.
With no guarantee that the court will rule in Ms. Vataka's favor, right?
Right.
And will Ms. Vataka have to pay income tax on the amount she receives for the pension?
Well, as I've explained to Ms. Vataka, I don't give tax advice, but as a general rule, it will likely be taxable income to her.
So if it is, she will likely net about, let's say, $150 each monthly payment, or a total of about $27,000 after taxes, right?
Your math sounds about right.
My third grade teacher would be so proud of me. In any event, if our math is right, and I've made two assumptions there, that is, it's taxable income and what her marginal taxable rate would be. So if our math is right, Ms. Vataka's would be paying $35,000 in after-tax dollars now to try to recover $27,000 in after-tax dollars in monthly payments that won't even begin for about 20 years. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Ms. Vataka, what do you think about that?
My math doesn't sound like that sounds like such a good deal, and I hadn't really thought about it that way.
Now, as I've said before, you and Mr. Valsheen are the ones in charge here today. With your attorney's advice, only the two of you will decide whether and under what terms we settle here today. Along those lines, I will take to Mr. Valsheen whatever offer you wish to make on the pension issue. But I would ask you, would it make sense to see if there's some other way to address the pension question? And maybe you can start by helping me understand why you want the pension money.
Well, I just thought it was fair, and I just want to make my retirement as comfortable as it had been if we had not been divorced. I'm not saying that $200 will make all that difference, but it could mean a cruise every year or so, or a trip out of town to see my family. So I just kind of want it for comfort creatures and things to spoil myself.
Thank you. I think I understand where you're coming from. Do you have any ideas or other possible solutions regarding Mr. Valsheen's pension that would meet the needs you're expressing?
Aren't we stumped on this? Yeah.
Well, yeah, we can't come up with any other possibilities right now. Do you have any ideas?
One possibility to address your need that occurs to me is, what if you ask him for a lump sum payment now in lieu of any claim against his pension? It seems to me that you might be able to take that sum, invest it wisely, and receive the same $200 or more per month 20 years or so from now. What do you think about that?
Calliope, that makes great sense. If we can get the other side to agree, you would wind up actually getting the benefit of the pension payments without having to spend a ton of money fighting over it. Let me call my brother, the financial whiz, and see how much he thinks you would need now to realize that much income in the future, okay?
Yeah, that sounds great with me. Thanks.
And don't worry, Mr. Mediator, I won't disclose to my brother anything we are talking about here at mediation. I'll just ask him to run the calculations for me.
Excellent. That saves me from having to talk about confidentiality again. Why don't I step outside so you can make that call and then formulate your offer?
Thanks, that'd be great.
We appreciate our actors. I think they did a wonderful job. So we're going to have our panel comment on this caucus also and apply the same rules so that they can teach us how we could better conduct the mediation applying the ethics. And we'll start with Tagrid on the mediator's role.
Thank you, Susan. Well, clearly this was a different mediator than the one that we saw on the video. Empathetic, non-coercive. Here, the mediator effectively used his role to get the wife and the attorney to realize the cost of litigation and offered some suggestion, the lump sum payment. He pointed out that there's no guarantee how a court would rule, and was able to elicit, some factual basis and arguments from the parties and from the wife and from the attorney on how to settle the pension rather than impose his opinion. The ability to suggest different ways and explore different alternatives and look at, the case from different perspectives is just so important, because a lot of people come into mediation with a certain mindset and it's this or nothing. So as mediators, that creativity becomes very important in settlement. And basically, he kind of put the power back with the parties. They came up with their own, solutions and, were able to, think outside the box, so to speak.
All right. Well, we appreciate that role of the mediator. And Chris, do you think this mediator made more allowance for the party to express her self-determination?
Absolutely. I want to be Juan when I grow up, right? I loved how he drew out perhaps the part of the pursuing the pension, how it wasn't really in her economic interest to do it that way, and that when she then expressed an interest, he latched onto that and tried to find some other creative solution that he thought perhaps the other side might be willing to consider to address what her interests were. Throughout the entire time, he never forced her to do anything, never sought to coerce her or her lawyer, even while he was reality testing. Reality tested around the substance, reality tested around the cost, reality tested around, is that really what you want at the end of the day? And it was very deftly done. So well done, sir.
Thank you. We're not going to talk about any non-participating person because we didn't use the issue of the embryos. We just talked about the pension in this reenactment. So that brings us to Jean and whether this mediator was more impartial.
Yes, by using phrases such as as we get closer and closer to a deal you both can live with, and the parties have worked out most of the issues in this divorce, and what matters is whether you and Mr. Valsheen think it's fair. He put the power back with the party to make her own decision. His body language was a lot better. Okay, it was more neutral. He encouraged the resolution between the parties, and he actually abided by the rule of having a non-party participate in the process per agreement of both parties. Her brother was in the mediation, and that was by agreement of both parties. It was much better. He asked open-ended questions so she could come up with her own decision.
Good. And I think he had a better demeanor, wouldn't you say, Chris?
Absolutely, absolutely. He was always very courteous, very respectful. What you folks out there in the audience couldn't tell was that Juan's phone was buzzing in his pocket, and he did not answer it, so that was very well done.
All right. Well, we appreciate that he adds that calm demeanor. And were there any confidentiality issues raised, Togren?
Not in this mediation, even though the brother was sitting there quietly. They sought the permission to have him participate in or sit in on the mediation. They got the permission and the consent from the other side. So, I mean, I don't know what role he played, but he played it very well.
I think he was a support.
And he was there for support,
That's right.
exactly. So, but definitely the consents were acquired before he was able to sit in. And at the end, when the wife's attorney needed to call an accountant, there was an emphasis that there would be no information revealed, that they would just be seeking tax advice, and no, information would be disclosed.
Good. And Charles, did you have any concerns about this mediator offering any advice, opinions, or information that he shouldn't have?
No concerns at all. It was nicely done. He basically, let's see, I've heard it expressed in this way by a presenter, that our role as mediators is to bring parties to the well, and we all know the phrase, you can lead a horse to the well, but you can't make them drink. So our role here, and I think it was very nicely illustrated, is to bring the parties to the well, or the party in this instance, and make her realize how thirsty she is. And for her to then make her own conclusion about whether she wants to, yeah, it's worth it, I want to do it, I want to fight about it, or, it makes no sense at all. But he didn't make that suggestion as the mediator. He just asked the questions, she answered them and was able to draw her own conclusion. So I thought that was a very effective way of getting to that point. And again, honoring and respecting self-determination. It's your call, it's your decision. What do you want to do? What do you think about that? And that's where you have to leave it, and that's where he left it.
Good. Togred, were there any scheduling mediation issues?
No, he didn't rush them out. He didn't rush the process. He was very patient. He gave them the opportunity to speak with an accountant. No scheduling issues at all.
Okay, well, that's good. And even if his phone was buzzing, he didn't pick it up. So what I noticed, and you mentioned, were the open-ended questions, asking the wife and her attorney for ideas, and particularly asking her to reveal what her underlying interest was on the pension, not just her position, but what was her interest under that pension. And of course, although we laughed at what her interest was, we would be respectful in real life because everyone has an interest under their positions. And hers is certainly valid, just as the mediator's own interest in something might be. So just the basic foundational principles, wouldn't you say, of mediation is what makes a good mediator?
Absolutely.
Anything you want to add to basic principles? Okay, they have
Crickets.
Said, they have said many things about the rules and how to apply them. And like the Supreme Court, we encourage all of you to conduct all types of mediation by using techniques which honor the basic foundational principles of mediation, facilitating the voluntary resolution of disputes while protecting and honoring each party's right to self-determination, maintaining our impartiality, providing a balanced process which empowers each party, and conducting a mediation that you can be proud of. You don't have to worry about a complaint being filed against you, and it furthers the reputation of the mediation process in the community, which has long-term benefits for all of us, not only the mediators, but definitely for the parties and the court system, and that is our mission. So please join me in thanking our panel members this morning. They volunteered their time and efforts, and we greatly appreciate that.